Only 2 days old, but already the PruTour has caught the imagination with crowds flocking to see the spectacle. It's attracted people from all over, and I mean all over. And the main attraction for them all is Chris Boardman, here racing home to win stage 1 while wearing the leader's red jersey. He has lifted himself beyond his expectations.
Honestly, was that win a bit of a surprise? It was an absolute shock.
Well, let's see if he can surprise again today, but even after 2 wins, his lead is only 9 seconds ahead of George Hincapie and Stuart O'Grady in third, 10 seconds back. So for stage 2, we've crossed the Tyne to Gateshead and now face 170 kilometres south to York. And what a route! The North Yorkshire Moors will deliver their jewels. The climbs of Westerdale and Rosedale Chimney await. It's a day of action for riders and team cars alike, and here's Paul Sherwin now to describe the gears the riders may choose.
This is the ratio that the riders on the PruTour will use on the steep climbs. Now, nearly every team will use a 39-tooth chainring in the front, but the most important part is at the back here, and on the big steep climbs they'll be using a 23-tooth sprocket, making a very low ratio. But this is the important part of the bike, because this is the part that the team mechanics can change on a daily basis to make sure that their riders have the ideal ratio for the big steep climbs along the roads of the PruTour.
And after 32 kilometres, 4 riders were in the lead, and by the time they arrived at Westerdale, they had quite an advantage over the field. These are the legs of Jens Voigt on the GAN team of Chris Boardman. 56 is Chris Walker. Then we have Jonathan Wouters of the US Postal Service and Ludovic Auger of the Big Mat Aubervilliers team.
It certainly is an ideal move for Chris Boardman, who's leading the main field at the moment, putting Jens Voigt into that early breakaway. But you can see he's surrounded by the US Postal Service, and that leading group filled 6 minutes and 20 seconds ahead.
And that means that Chris Walker in the front group is the new leader of the Tour for the Bright Voice team, and that is a surprise and a very pleasant one for Chris.
It certainly is, but as we look at the leading group of 4 riders here, one man in serious difficulties here, and in fact it's the Frenchman Ludovic Auger who's going off the back. Chris Walker, the new leader on the road in the Bright Voice jersey there in second position, looking quite comfortable.
And we can't say the same about Jens Voigt here. He's suffering but hanging on, trying to do the perfect teammate job here for Chris Boardman. Jonathan Wouters is on form. He won a big race in the United States, the Redlands Classic. Further back, Chris Boardman looks to be climbing very, very well indeed now. He still has George Hincapie in this group, not too far behind him. Hincapie's teammate, Baranowski, is just on the shoulder there of Chris Boardman, and O'Grady is just behind him.
O'Grady was looking very comfortable there, but this is a dangerous move by Jonathan Wouters, because he's already won the Redlands Classic in the United States of America this year. He's finished 6th overall in the circuit of the Sarthe, and he's a very experienced professional. He started off riding for a Spanish team which went bankrupt, but now if he can just hold on, it may well be the turning point of the race.
But Stuart O'Grady is a tower of strength today. This big man from down under and a great friend and teammate of Boardman's is trying to reduce the gap. He's already wearing that mauve jersey of sprint leader of this race, going out this morning just 10 seconds behind Chris Boardman, who rides alongside him. Back to the leaders.
Well, Jonathan Voigt has been setting an awful lot of the pace-making on the front here. Chris Walker in second position there, very comfortable, I think, and happy to be there. His own teammate was there before, Johnny Clay. He's been dropped and left behind, but for the moment, these 3 riders still have a massive margin over the chasing group.
So we are high in the North Yorkshire Moors. Jens Voigt looking back and hoping soon he might see the red jersey of Boardman, but there's still an awful lot of work before that happens. But Stuart O'Grady here and Boardman are doing all of the work, and the US Postal team are just following.
The leading group of riders, 3 men coming over the top there of that climb, the second climb of the day, Westerdale, and the Frenchman has been left behind. In fact, Wouters went over the top in first position there, and he's looking very comfortable. And
right behind him is Chris Walker, a former winner of the Round Britain Milk Race, and very experienced indeed. He gets the 10 points. Voigt is third, and Ludovic Auger is fourth. They're the top 4 names, and they've still got the climb of Rosedale Chimney to come.
In fact, Ludovic Auger has made an incredible comeback there. I thought that was the last we were going to see of him, but he's picked himself back up. He's recovered a little bit over the top of that climb, and he's pulled himself back up to the lead. 4 men back at the head of the race.
And let's not forget, Paul, that Auger was in fact a teammate of Chris Boardman's last year. Now back to the chasing group. It's getting smaller and smaller here, and still driving it along is the big man from Australia, Stuart O'Grady, and Chris Boardman is simply getting better and better in this event.
He certainly is. We're looking at a couple of the best track riders in the world. Today they're riding over some of the toughest mountains that England has to offer. 5 minutes and 57 seconds. So the work being done by the leader of the points competition, Stuart O'Grady, is slowly pulling them back.
Here we are now with the leaders on Rosedale Chimney while the others descend from the moors in the distance, and the 4 riders here, surprisingly, it looks as though Auger is finding this climb easier, but this is so hard.
It certainly is. The crowd always come out to see the race here. This is a magnificent crowd of people who've come to see, but look, Phil, just how difficult it is. The man leading them up now in the white jersey, the Bright Voice team, is Chris Walker, but you can see the size of the gear. He's having a great amount of difficulty with it, just rolling it over.
Well, many of these riders have seen the big climb to the Pyrenees and the Alps in the Tour de France, but I'll tell you what, they're never as steep as this climb here. Rosedale Chimney is an absolute brute, and just to prove a point here, look at these riders, Paul. They are zigzagging to try and keep up their momentum.
Certainly, Phil, you can see by the way these riders are attacking this climb at the moment, they're very much overgeared, they're struggling to try and survive. Everything that they can do now is just to try and get up this mountain.
Well, Chris Walker is doing it best. He's no stranger to this part of the area because he is a Yorkshireman, and he's showing a German, an American and a Frenchman right now the way up. But look at O'Grady. He said to himself, it's time to go.
Well, in fact, Phil, he made a move like this in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, one of the major classics in the Ardennes earlier this season. Before the climb of Stocker, he took a little bit of an advantage because he doesn't like these short, steep climbs, and I think what he's trying to do is steal 5 or 10 seconds before he gets to the steep part of the course, just so he can survive over the top and maybe hope that Boardman will come up to him.
Well, this isn't an official part of the climb, but it's tough enough, and he's used that as a springboard to break the field up. This is a look from the helicopter along Rosedale Chimney. Massive crowd enjoying the sunshine of a spring bank holiday, and Jens Voigt is now trying. They pull back Walker. Jonathan Vaughters is trying to go. Walker is going after him. They are making this hill look so easy, and it isn't.
Well, it certainly isn't. The reason Voigt has gone there is because, in fact, he's a little bit worried about the fact that Chris Walker is the new leader on the road, and this may well be a slight problem for the GAN team. They sent Jens Voigt into the breakaway early this morning to try and take a sting out of the team of the US Postal Service, but their tactics have slightly backfired on them now, so now Voigt has to go out and try and leave Chris Walker behind.
Well, 4 years ago, Jens Voigt was the best amateur rider in the world. He had such a tremendous season. He's now a professional. He's joined the GAN team. There's the result over the top of the chimney. Voigt, Vaughters, Auger, and that means that Jonathan Vaughters is the new leader now in the King of the Mountains competition. This man, though, is not thinking of any of that. He is thinking of closing the gap to those leaders. Stuart O'Grady is riding today like 10 men, and we have to say so too is Chris Boardman, Paul, because I think he's coming back.
He certainly is. That's Boardman just at the head of the chasing group there in the red jersey, looking very comfortable. O'Grady made a sensible move here, just attacking at the bottom of the climb here of the Rosedale Chimney. He's opened up 10 seconds over the rest of the group, and now he can ride this climb at his own pace, not putting himself into danger, not putting himself into the red zone, but just making sure that he gets over it comfortably without any problem or mechanical incidents.
Well, Boardman's pulling along another 10 riders there as that bunch of 19 or 20 men gets spread out on the steep section of the Rosedale Chimney. He is not actually chasing his own man, but I think the momentum is taking him closer to Stuart O'Grady. The best thing that could happen is that Boardman gets up there and doesn't get up there with more than 3 or 4 riders.
You can see Boardman in the red jersey, very comfortable there. I think the Festina rider moving up alongside Boardman is going to be Neil Stevens, but there's still 1 or 2 jerseys there of the US Postal Service, and probably George Hincapie is trying to stay in there with Boardman.
4 leaders then are well over the top now of Rosedale Chimney. We're on the way off the moors, 66 kilometers an hour. That's about 43 miles an hour. Back to the climb, not quite 43 miles an hour here, as Stuart O'Grady grits his teeth and just hopes he can keep the pedals turning over.
All he's trying to do now is to make sure he gets over the top of this climb before the group comes back to it, but the man making all the pressure at the front is Chris Boardman. Further down, Phil, Alan Iaconi was one of the riders in the early breakaway. Now he's been left behind.
He's watched the leaders go by, he's watched Boardman go by, he's struggling now for Alan Iaconi. But here we have a great chase by the man in red, and O'Grady has looked over and seen the captain coming. He'll be pretty pleased about that, I think, because once they get to the top of this hill, there's a small climb left, and it's all onto the flat for the finish in York. This could be working out very well indeed for Chris Boardman.
Certainly could be, but there's still 30 miles to go to the finish from the top of the Rosedale chimney. But looking at the back of the field here, you can see just so many of these riders are suffering. This is what it's back like in the rear group on the road, and all of these riders can do is hope that they can survive and then try and get to the finish and make sure they don't get eliminated. But Phil, Chris Boardman looking very comfortable on the Rosedale chimney. He's got enough in his mind to look around to see what damage he's doing behind him. With him there is Neil Stevens. The US Postal Service rider is Darius Baranovsky, the man who started this morning in 5th place in the overall standings.
And another little surge here by Chris Boardman. Neil Stevens just behind him there is being made a little speck in the distance by that acceleration. Boardman has sensed he can go up and join O'Grady here. Big effort required to do it because they're coming up towards the summit of the climb. O'Grady looks over his shoulder, visibly slows when he sees it's the red jersey of his team leader coming up.
That's a sign of a great tactician. He knows he's done enough now to get over the top of the Rosedale chimney, but further down, a lot of problems for Eric Boeswinkel.
Well, they say Holland is flat, and certainly there's no hills like this, even in the Valkenburg region of Holland. But Boeswinkel is off and gratefully receiving the pushes of the crowd. Now back to O'Grady at the front. He knows now that Chris is coming, and these boys are strong today at the right time.
They certainly are. In fact, a serious group starting to form here. This is going to be a counter-attack. Stuart O'Grady looking over his shoulder, now waiting for Boardman with Baranovsky and Neil Stevens. This is Rob Hales for the Bright Boys team, and it gives you a chance to see just how difficult it is to get over these climbs here in the Yorkshire Dales.
Go on, keep going, keep going, go on!
Well, everybody's legs are aching just watching Rob Hales there, but these boys are sprinting to the top now. They are still some distance behind the leaders, but it's O'Grady who goes over the top, followed by Chris Boardman, and being joined by US Postal rider. That's the gap, Paul. 5 minutes 10, and Chris Walker is still the leader of this race.
He certainly is, but you can see one or two of these riders having quite a laugh trying to get themselves up the climb.
Well, he's recognised some friends, I think.
Get back on, I'll give you a push. I don't think I can get on. You can get on. It's too steep, aren't you? Yeah, you're right. You're right. Hang on. I've always wanted to get on steep. All right, we go. Up, we'll go.
Welcome back. This is what the scene is like at the finish in York of the PruTour, and the cavalcade, which travels an hour ahead of the riders, is now in town, which means the race now is not all that far away. It's been showdown time on the North Yorkshire moors. The riders now entering into the village of Helmsley here. The 4 riders are still in the lead, but the big chase is on.
It certainly is, and the next point they're going to come to is the sprint point. The sprint point here not really quite so important because the main leaders are a long way behind on the road. It'd be interesting to see, though, if Chris Walker in 3rd position actually goes for the sprint point here. 3 seconds on the line as they come up to the line in Helmsley.
Well, at one stage today, and for a very long time, Chris Walker was in the red jersey, owned here, for the time being at least, by Chris Boardman. But the chase group, inspired by Boardman and the man in the Moe Sprinters jersey, Stuart O'Grady, is having its effect. The other rider here in our picture in 2nd place is Neil Stevens. Came here recovering from injury, and like the true pro he is, he's going so well. They are closing the gap.
They certainly are. These are the 4 leaders at the moment. The man opening up the sprint for the line in Helmsley is going to be Jens Voigt. No challenge at all from the other riders. All they want to do is try and work together and make sure they can hold off the coming back of the riders behind. One man caught in between at the moment, Jonathan Clay, wearing number 51 from the Bright Voice team.
Well, that is the 3rd sprint win of the day for Jens Voigt. So be it. He's been the passenger watching out for Chris Boardman's interest, nipping away and getting the points. So he leads the competition now, 15 points ahead of Stuart O'Grady. So the jersey will change shoulders within the GAN team. It goes from O'Grady across now to Voigt. And look at this, Paul. They have picked up John Clay, 51. So he has dropped back. John was dropped by the lead group out in the moors. He is now going back forward with the chase group led by O'Grady.
This is an incredible train these 2 GAN riders are putting on for us here. The purple jersey on the front on number 2 there is Stuart O'Grady, but they really have pulled this group back, Phil. It was over 6 minutes, and now the front group has split into 2 groups of 2.
And Ludovic Auger, who was dropped on the moors and rejoined as well, is pile driving the leadership there. Jens Voigt going along again is what we call a ticket collector, sitting there and offering no assistance. There's the 2 riders who are passing down the line now. Chris Walker and Jonathan Waters. And just coming into view with the camera, there is the group of Boardmen, and they are coming back together. We are within the last 15 kilometres of the race.
Certainly, and still it's the purple jersey on the front of O'Grady behind. Another chase going on as well. This is the US Postal Service here, led by Tyler Hamilton. Second place is George Hincapie, third in the overall standings. He wants to get back to Chris Boardman and Stuart O'Grady.
So the US Postal Service here calling all of their troops to the front to try and nullify this breakaway. There is a real chance they will do it. They are 54 seconds behind the front of the race. Now it's coming together. This is the Boardman group. Up front are the two we saw, Chris Walker and Jonathan Waters. So the group is now back together, just two riders in front.
It's not going to be very long, Phil, before it all comes back together, because the speed those two men are piling on at the front is really driving this along like an express train. You can just see the other two riders who just clipped off the front there, just around the corner. So shortly it will all be back together as we head down to the Minster in York.
Well, there is the beautiful Minster in historic York, and as we look at the Minster, the lead group has in fact come together. So there is nobody in front now. Boardman's group has caught the last of the four escapers. And now, Paul, Boardman, the captain of the GAN team, is saying something to Stuart O'Grady.
A little discussion going on between the two. These two riders have worked very well together over the last 30 miles to pull back the race, to pull themselves into a winning position. And it may well be that Boardman is saying to O'Grady, let me do a little bit more of the work. You have the best sprint.
Well, this group is still coming back. George Hincapie is fighting valiantly to hold on to his second place overall. They're leading the chase on here all the way. Ekimov is the man doing it. This brilliant, brilliant Russian national champion, stage winner of the Tour de France, a world record holder. It's down to 45 seconds.
Well, it was 1.5 minutes just a short while ago, down to 45 seconds. It really may well all come back in the finishing straight. Boardman in the red jersey doing a lot of work on the front. Look at the pained expression now on the face of Jens Voigt. Taking a back seat, probably under the instruction of Boardman, is the man in the purple jersey, Stuart O'Grady.
Well, Voigt has taken a back seat. He now has to work in that lead group as we swing back here to Tyler Hamilton, trying to drag this man, George Hincapie, back into the race, because the gap has opened, but they are closing it down. You know, Hincapie could still save everything here. What a dramatic end. It's been a real battle in the moors, and it could all come back together in the finish. Just on 3 kilometres to go now, as the leaders are now 8 strong, are heading down towards Moulton Road and the finish, and the gap is down to around about 20 seconds.
It's very close indeed. If George Hincapie could get himself back there and win the stage, he could be the new leader of the race this afternoon. All of the work on the front, though, is being done by the red jersey. You can see that is Chris Boardman. He's currently the leader of the race, but he's sacrificing all of his chances. The chase group coming round the corner here, just 20 seconds down. They also have 3 kilometres to go before the finish.
Well, this should have been a decisive stage. It should have been the stage when everybody said Chris Boardman wouldn't make it. Well, just look at this now. Boardman has springboarded his teammate towards the line now. As Boardman drops away, O'Grady's going forward.
Well, there's an attack came in. This time it was Darius Baranowski going across the front there, marked by the man in the purple jersey. That is O'Grady, another rider coming across. This is the best placed rider in the US Postal Service team. He was 5th this morning, trying to outfox everybody. Look how comfortable O'Grady is on his wheel, though.
O'Grady has been simply superb today, and he's now, I think he's been told by Chris Boardman, you've got to try and win this, mate, and he's gone forward with the break, and they are going. This is the chase group. You can see the others in the front. This race is going to be ever so close when we get to the line.
Well, this is Boardman now leading him round the corner on his wheel. One of the other US Postal Service riders, it must be Bortas, because he's been caught out in the split. Looking up the long straightaway, the leading group now of 5 riders coming together with just 1 kilometre left to go. On the back there, number 11, is the Festina rider, Neil Stevens.
Well, we saw Neil Stevens yesterday as we came into Newcastle make an attack for the line, and he's done it again. It is a perfect move, and this again is how he won a stage of the Tour de France.
Certainly, as he looks over his shoulder, there's no reaction come from the other 4. It could be the one for Steve-O this afternoon. Everybody loved this rider. The crowd at the finish line would like to see him win. He's such a popular rider. Looking over his shoulders now, Baranowski trying to see just what the reaction is from behind. This could be what Steve-O needs. He's got around about 10 seconds over the 3 riders chasing.
So Stevens, in fact, we can see it, has been brought back, so he's been caught and he must be able to see the line here. Stevens, if we look at the pictures on the left now, and he has been caught by the chase group. Baranowski is in there as well. Jonathan Clay, who rode so well, is on the wheel now, and right at the back of the group is Stuart O'Grady with the rest of the race chasing them down. This is going to be a tremendous sprint finish, and it looks as though Johnny Clay is going to have a go on the left. He's had a wonderful day. O'Grady's on his wheel trying to come to the middle, and he's been hooked. Clay has pushed him out to one side, but O'Grady gets through. He gets the bonus of 10 seconds. He is going to be the new leader of the Tour, because clearly there is a time gap back to the rest of the race. Here comes Chris Boardman now. The clock is counting down the gap. 13 seconds it is, and that'll be his deficit now behind Stuart O'Grady tonight. And look at George Hincapie's group. They were right on the back wheel there of Chris Boardman. This race is still a battle of seconds. These guys, well, are they friends or what? They really did work the race over today, and Chris Boardman must feel great. This is how it happened, Paul. The two strong men, the resistance of Chris Boardman, the pure strength of Stuart O'Grady. They decided the race today, and when they got to the front, they decided how it would all come about in the end. And you know, if Johnny Clay had won today for that manoeuvre there, he would have been relegated. I feel certain of that. But it didn't matter, because Stuart O'Grady got the stage win. Terrific ride by O'Grady. He salutes the crowd and gets his second win of the year. Johnny Clay second, Ludovic Auger third, and Darius Baranowski is fourth. Chris Boardman came home in seventh. Jens Voigt was 26th.
GAN played a great card today because they launched that early attack with Jens Voigt getting up there. Took a lot of pressure off you and Chris Boardman.
Yeah, well, that was the plan. You know, we're here to just make try and make it as easy as we can for ourselves. And yeah, today it really worked out. You know, it came down really close to the finish there, and Chris decided with 15 kilometres to go that he was going to sacrifice his race for me. And you know, it took a lot of guts and you know, a lot of trust in myself. So I felt I really had to do something. You know, I had to win the stage for him.
A lot of English supporters here for you. It must be great because you spend most of the season racing in Europe, and you come here and race in a country where we actually speak the same language.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, you know. We can even watch the TV afterwards, so it makes a big difference, you know. And so far it's been an awesome tour, and you know, I think it's just going to get bigger and better.
Good on you, Stewie. Well, let's have a look at this. O'Grady is the race leader. Boardman is second at 13 seconds. Baranowski is up to third. Hincapie is down to fourth. And Neil Stevens is there now in fifth. And so too is Chris Newton. A great ride by him. And the evergreen Sean Yates, who really has only just made a comeback for this race, is still in 33rd place. On the podium, the race leaders have changed tonight. The red jersey is now on the shoulder of O'Grady. Points is also O'Grady. Sprint is Voigt, and mountains Porters. And there'll be no tears in the gang camp tonight, because Chris Boardman and Stuart O'Grady are the best of friends, and this race remains a matter of seconds. Now we're on to stage number 3. The riders moving from Manchester over Home Moss itself in the Pennines, then into the Trough of Bowland, and then the long flat road to Blackpool. This is a very competitive race. It's a great race. Stay with it here on Sky Sports. Goodbye.